What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a film I got to check out a little bit early, and that film is called Hard Eyes. Directed by Josh Ruben, this film stars people like Olivia Holt, Mason Gooding, Devon Sawa, Jordana Brewster, and more. And before we get too far into this video, if you're a fan of early reviews like this one, as well as retrospective reviews, live streams, and the occasional vlog, then you're in the right place, and I'd like to ask you to consider subscribing. But if you're a returning viewer, well, thanks so much for coming back. And today we're going to be talking about Hard Eyes, the latest horror slasher coming from Sony Pictures that I got to check out a little bit early. But before we get into my thoughts on the movie, let's get into what this one is all about. It's Valentine's Day, so you know what that means. It's time for true love to conquer all. But it also means that people are gonna die, as there's a new killer on the streets known as the Hard Eyes Killer, or HEK as they call him in this film. And unfortunately, our two main leads in the film, played by Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, are now at the center of this entire experience, having to run away and try to find a way to stop the Hard Eyes Killer. And that's all I'll say about the premise. If you've seen the trailer for this film, you'll know that it looks very reminiscent of things like Jason, Friday the 13th, as well as My Bloody Valentine. So going into this, I was hoping for a good horror slasher, and I'm happy to say that's exactly what I got. If you guys are a fan of this channel, then you'll know that I'm a huge fan of slashers, but most notably, you'll know that my favorite genre of horror is horror comedy. So when I saw we had a new Valentine's Day slasher on the horizon, I was definitely excited. So yeah, this film is directed by Josh Ruben, who I have enjoyed as an actor. So when I saw he was directing this, I thought, oh, what an interesting choice. And I'm a huge fan of slasher films like the Friday the 13th films, My Bloody Valentine, which I haven't covered on the channel yet, and my favorite franchise, Chucky, which is, of course, as well a horror comedy franchise. And this film actually stars Devon Sawa, who I've always enjoyed ever since back in the Final Destination days, but also in recent years with the Chucky TV show. So it was great to see him in here as well. As a horror comedy fan, this film did everything I would want it to do. It's very tongue-in-cheek, it knows what it is, it's silly, and then on the horror side of things, it knows exactly what it is as well. It's not taking itself too seriously. By no means is this a film that is going to scare you or keep you up at night by any stretch of the imagination. It's a film that's asking you to slurp down some soda, eat some popcorn, and watch people get massacred over the course of the film, with a lot of pop culture references, a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes about Valentine's Day, about romance, about slashers. It's got tons of little puns in there as well, a bunch of references in its dialogue to a bunch of romantic films. And in a lot of ways, I think that this film struck a nice balance of being a love story while also being a slasher film. As a fan of slashers, I enjoyed the aesthetic of this film. I enjoyed the Hard Eyes Killer, though he is in a lot of ways just a Jason ripoff, but with a different mask with the heart eyes. But I liked the look of the character. I thought that the overall cinematography of the film was really solid, and the tone was just evenly balanced for me. It struck a great balance of that horror slasher element with that silliness that you want from a film like this. I love a film like this that just asks you to not take things too seriously. It knows what it is, and it creates a fun enough and compelling story that isn't groundbreaking, but just something that knows what it is and is having fun with it. And I got to see this in a theater that had press along with myself, as well as an audience of people in there, and the reactions were a lot of fun. This is the kind of movie that you're going to go to see a bunch of people in the theater talking to the screen, and it was never overly obnoxious. It felt like everybody was having fun watching the film. Everybody was in on the joke. Everybody was poking fun at the film, into the kills. There was those oohs and ahs and some of the gruesome kills in the film. There was those moments where people were going like, "Don't go that way, you dumb bitch." There were so many great moments like that over the course of the film where the audience was able to be a part of the experience, and I think it really added to the experience for me at least. And as a fan of these kinds of movies, I just love that this film was something that felt like it harkened from the old days. It felt like something that was a love letter to romance films, but most notably to old school cheesy slashers. It had that nice balance of what I want, and I really enjoyed that. In terms of our performances here, I think Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding do a great job here. They're definitely hamming it up in certain scenes. The film is definitely on the dialogue side of things, leaning into being more of a love story with these two characters that just so happen to be at the center of this scary adventure, but it never really feels like they're in mortal danger. There are times where it feels like that, but it feels like a very fun ride. it, and it feels light throughout the entirety of it. And there are nice moments of humor throughout a lot of these moments that add a great sense of levity to these moments that in maybe another darker slasher would have come off a lot more serious. I think this is the kind of film that's going to depend on your personal taste and what you want out of a slasher. I know that there are certain people who don't really like horror comedies, so I can totally appreciate that this may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I certainly am. And so I think this is the kind of movie that you can go to the theater with some friends or maybe your significant other for Valentine's Day, have a laugh, and maybe walk away a little bit more in love. Maybe not so much, but I think that this film striked a nice balance of being a romance story that has the cliche elements that come from a horror slasher and from a love story, but is able to poke fun at both genres in such a fun way that just made this a fun, lighthearted affair that never really, again, asked much of you and never really took itself too seriously. I think if this movie would have taken itself too seriously, I probably wouldn't have been as happy with it, but I ultimately walked away from this film having had a good time, and I think it's a film that a lot of people will enjoy. I don't think this is a film that's going to blow you away on a narrative level, nor do I think this is a film that's going to blow you away on a character level, but I do think this is a film that knows what it is and executes on that vision well, and I think that the idea of the Hard Eyes Killer was cool. I like the look of the character. I think this is definitely going to be something we see costumes of in the future, maybe even appearances at things like Halloween Horror Nights. Who knows? We'll see where this character goes as time goes on. The audience will dictate the success of this character for sure. If I had to lean into any gripes with this film, I do think, like I said before, there's a lot of cliches in this film, not only for the horror slasher genre, but for the romantic genre in general, and sometimes it was a little too cliche. I think there's areas where they could have made this film feel a little bit less like your typical horror slasher, but on another hand, I see what they were going for here, so I don't really necessarily give this film a huge negative when it comes down to that. But what I will say is a little bit of a letdown is the big reveal at the end of who the killer is. I thought it was predictable, but also kind of just a little bit underwhelming. I didn't mind it, especially with how the final showdown in this film goes. I thought the final showdown was solid, and I really enjoyed the practical effects in this film. As a huge fan of horror slashers, one of the best parts of these films are the kills. It's the murdering of this movie. It's the way that these kills are showcased with really great practical effects, blood, guts, and all that stuff. And I think when it comes down to that part of the film, all of that is done very well. Again, I don't think this is going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you're getting this passionate review from somebody who is a big fan of these kind of movies, and the fact that I saw it in a theater with people who were having a good time alongside myself. I laughed at times, I cringed at times, and I really enjoyed myself along the way, even if I know this isn't a film that's probably going to be on my top 10 by the time we get to the end of the year. But for now, in the early part of the year, I'm thinking this was a good way to start off the year with some good slasher fun, and I look forward to seeing what other horror films we get over the course of 2025. So that's going to be my thoughts on Hard Eyes. A fun, good, dumb slasher film that has a nice love story at the center of it that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy, and I look forward to hearing the various opinions on this one. Do you think this movie is stupid and is not your cup of tea? Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.